So today we're diving into a really fascinating blueprint for education. It's called the Maqāṣid Framework, and it really asks us to rethink the entire purpose of learning by proposing a pretty radical shift in how we look at the classroom.
So let's just start with a big question, something for all of us to think about. Are our schools actually measuring the things we say we value the most? The stuff that really matters for our kids' development?
Because when you look closely, there's this massive disconnect, right? We talk a big game about wanting wisdom, but then we grade based on quiz scores. We say we want to build character, but what the system actually tracks is just course completion. This gap, this space between our ideals and our metrics, well, that's the heart of the problem.
And the result of this gap? You get what the source material here calls a purpose-blind classroom. It's a system where the process, getting the grade, finishing the module, memorizing the facts, has become the only goal. It's completely overshadowed the deeper reasons we even have education in the first place.
Okay, but what if there was another way? What if an ancient blueprint, one drawn from Islamic tradition, actually holds a profound answer to this very modern problem? The solution is rooted in this concept called Maqāṣid Sharia. Now, I know that might sound a little complex or academic, but think of it simply as the higher objectives, the ultimate why behind Islamic principles. It's a framework that's always been about human flourishing, and now it's being applied directly to education.
And the whole thing is built on this one single, non-negotiable rule. You cannot chase higher test scores or better engagement metrics if it means you have to compromise what the framework calls the 5 essentials. So you're probably wondering, what are these 5 essentials? Well, they're the 5 pillars that form the absolute, unshakable foundation of every single lesson, every activity, and every assessment in this entire model. First up, the preservation of religion. This means that no subject is ever taught in a vacuum. A science lesson, for example, isn't just about the mechanics of the water cycle. It's also an opportunity to foster a sense of wonder and gratitude by connecting that scientific reality to a God-centric worldview. Second is the preservation of life. This one is huge. It makes student well-being completely non-negotiable. So imagine a group project. The grading wouldn't just be about the final PowerPoint. It would actively measure and prioritize whether students felt psychologically safe and supported throughout the process. It's a principle any school could benefit from. The third pillar is the preservation of the intellect. And here, the goal is genuine wisdom, not just memorizing a bunch of facts. That's why an exam might ask a student to write a reflection on how a text applies to their own life. That's a much deeper, more meaningful measure of understanding than just translating it word for word. Number 4 is the preservation of lineage. And this is a really beautiful one. It sees education as a tool to actually strengthen families and communities. So a homework assignment on gratitude isn't just another worksheet. It could be an activity where the student interviews their parents or grandparents, bringing that lesson right back into the home and reinforcing those family bonds. And the fifth and final pillar is the preservation of property. This is all about preparing students for an ethical economic life. So a math class on percentages, it wouldn't just use random abstract examples. It could use a real-world problem like calculating zakah or obligatory charity, which teaches both the math and financial responsibility at the exact same time. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. This all sounds amazing in theory, right? But how on earth do you actually measure these things? How do you put a number on character or faith? And this, right here, is where the framework gets truly innovative. It introduces a system to make the development of tarbiyah, that is, character and spiritual growth, both visible and manageable. And it does this using something we're all familiar with from the business world: key performance indicators, or KPIs. So this is how you translate those abstract values into concrete data. Instead of just hoping students are becoming resilient, the school literally tracks a faith resilience index. Instead of just assuming the classroom is a safe space, they measure a psychological safety index. It's a game-changing shift from just guesswork to data-informed nurturing. The source calls this a dashboard for the human soul. I mean, just think about that metaphor. It perfectly captures the goal: to make all those invisible parts of growth, the internal stuff, visible, so that teachers and parents can finally see what's really happening beneath the surface of just grades and test scores. So, what can you do once you have this dashboard? Well, for one, it allows educators to see the crucial difference between two very, very different kinds of students. It helps separate mere performance from real, deep understanding. First, you have the performer. And we all know the student, right? They get the straight A's, they use all the right buzzwords. But the second you throw a new problem at them, something they haven't seen before, they just fall apart. Their understanding is a mile wide, but only an inch deep. And their identity is totally wrapped up in always being right. But then there's the transformer. This is the student the Maqāṣid Framework is trying to create. This student might not always ace every test, but they are endlessly curious. They ask why. They love a new challenge, and they actually welcome being corrected because they see it as a chance to grow. Their goal isn't to be a knower, it's to always be a learner. This is the person who can truly adapt and innovate. And that brings us to a really important feature of this whole model. It is not a static, finished product. It's actually designed from the ground up to be a living, breathing approach to education that can evolve.
So how does it stay alive? Through something called the community of inquiry. It's basically a constant feedback loop where teachers, scholars, parents, and even the students themselves are always giving input to refine and improve the curriculum. It ensures it never gets stale or outdated.
So at the end of the day, what you get is not some rigid, dusty old rulebook. Instead, it's a dynamic guide that honors timeless principles while also staying completely responsive to the challenges and the needs of each new generation. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. What if we've been asking the wrong question this whole time? What if the real purpose of education isn't about creating better students, but about nurturing better, more whole, and more purposeful human beings? So that's our look at the Maqāṣid Framework, a really powerful vision for what education could be. If you want to learn more and explore it further, be sure to check out the source material from the A-Square Education Framework. Thanks so much for watching.